we hear often, don't we? It's guns don't kill people; people kill people
with guns.
But you know, as Forbes has just been caught up in this. Her issue is this is about the person who did it, and let's treat that problem. And this is often the argument used when people talk about, well, there's no need for more gun control, because it's about the problems with the people who use the guns, not the guns and the access to the guns themselves. What might change here, Mikey?
I lived in America for 6 years, and I think as a Brit, there are two things that are deeply entrenched inside the US that you have to physically live inside the US to really understand the extremes of the debates. One is gun control, the other one is racism. On the gun control side, I think no one can deny the facts. The facts are between 2005 and 2015, around 300,000 Americans died from gun violence. That's a fact. In the same amount of time, 71 died from domestic terrorism-related events. 71 versus 300,000. So for me, having been involved in the military and weapons and rules of engagement and everything else, the important component here is accessibility. And I think that has to change. The accessibility of weapons has to change in order to make even small progression moving forward. What happened yesterday, to me, was not a surprise.
No.
And that is so sad to be able to say that. But it was not a surprise because since Newtown, nothing has changed.
Right. There have been, I mean, I read yesterday, since 1970, more people have been killed by guns in America from just regular gun violence than in every war, people who've died in every war that America's ever been involved in.
Right. So there's...
Since 1970.
So the facts are there, and I think that's where we have to start. And this whole, you know, I mean, dare I say it, going back to, you know, Donald Trump assault on the media, fake news, it's really hard now to get the actual facts across. I'm having debates on Twitter about what the meaning of terrorism is. And I've been involved in counterterrorism for 20 years and reporting on counterterrorism for 20 years. And to me, having served in Northern Ireland with the IRA, having served in Kosovo with the KLA, having served in Iraq with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, having served in Afghanistan with the Taliban, the widely understood definition of terrorism is the use or threat of use of intimidation and violence to achieve political, religious, racial, or ideological gains.
But what about where you have... Look, I don't actually agree with you about this, and we've had this debate. And the reason I don't is that actually in Nevada, we both discovered before we came on air, the definition of terrorism actually applies to this guy.
It does, which is an anomaly in the broader understanding.
But to me, when a guy like this is up on a 32nd floor and fires rapid-fire bullets at 22,000 people, he is committing an act of terror. And the reason I think it's really important that we phrase it like that, notwithstanding the historical terminology, is that Donald Trump right now, he was bought by the NRA, right? They brought their millions of members to vote for Trump because he said, I will make sure your Second Amendment rights are never tampered with. Now he's got not a Muslim terrorist, where if that had been what had happened yesterday, killing that number of people, let me tell you, the travel ban would have happened like that. It would have added probably 6 or 7 countries. Widespread changing laws would have been brought in immediately. Right? Congress would have been bullied and shamed into doing it. But because it's an old white guy, right, who's not a Muslim...
Exercising his Second Amendment rights.
You know, he was a perfectly law-abiding gun owner until last night, right? And here's my point. Trump is then able to hide behind he's not a terrorist. He's just a crazy guy. What can I do? No laws get changed. And until we label people like this terrorists and compel the president and Congress to deal with them as they would conventional terrorists, I don't see how this changes.
So I would argue you don't base a principle on something that is already fundamentally wrong. So the fact that Trump comes out and tweets that an event that's happened in Europe, whether it's Brussels, that an event is a terrorist attack before the evidence is there, regardless of skin colour. This isn't about whether he's 65 or white or brown.
But that's what I take issue with.
But it's wrong Mikey, that it's evolved into that.
But here's the problem. It absolutely is about that.
Because, so let's rewind it.
When it's a Muslim terrorist, when it's an Islamist terrorist, right, abusing the religion of Islam to justify mass murder, the entire world erupts in blind fury and says we've got to deal with these terrorists, right? When it's this guy, right, who is abusing the most ridiculous gun laws in the world, actually within a week they'll all move on. And yet 600 people got shot, more than have been shot by any terrorist in this country in the entire modern history of the United Kingdom.
And trillions are spent at the same time. But under the term terrorism, the UK, the US, it's a strong word. The US has invaded countries. It's occupied countries.
Right.
It's conducted long bombing campaigns on countries under the banner of terrorism. What I would identify yesterday as is mass murder. And by labeling it as mass murder and what it is, we need to get down to the actual point, the causal factors of what happened yesterday.
Okay.
If you label it terrorism, then you start going, you give people excuses.
You know what I think a lot of people's despair over here is no matter what you label it, nothing actually is going to change.
Right.
Mikey, thanks very much indeed.